Hello students, here I'm going to help you out with answering the questions on your worksheets. But before we do that, make sure you finish your lessons first before you keep going. Alright? And when you're watching this video, I want you to be working along with me. So you need to have the worksheet out, you need to have your math book out and something to write with. It won't help you out if you're just watching it like a video. You need to work through those questions with me. Alright? So let's get on to it. Alright, let's look at these questions. So which index law are we going to use? Ever think about it? Well, we're obviously going to use the multiplication law or the third index law. If a number is raised to a power and then raised to another power, the result is that number raised to the product of the powers. Alright? So if it's a to the power of m and then the whole thing is raised to the power of n, it's the same as a to the power of m times n. Okay? So for example, if I've got 2 to the power of 3, then I am squaring this whole thing. What would that equal to? That would equal to 2 to the power of 3 times 2, which is the same as 2 to the power of 6. Okay, so let's work on question 1a. So I've got 3 to the power of 5 and then I raise it to the power of 5, which means it equals to 3 to the power of 5 times 5, which equals to 3 to the power of 25. You should be able to do the rest. I'm not going to do another one for you. Let's work on question 2a. Likewise, 2 to the power of 3. Then you raise the whole thing to the power of 2, which is the same as 2 to the power of 3 times 2. Right? Remember, you're just multiplying the powers together, which means you are going to end up with 2 to the power of 6. You should be able to do the rest. Question 3 is very similar to what we have done before, so I'm not going to go through it. Let's look at question 4. Let's look at 4a. I've got a to the power of 5, then to the power of 3. What does that equal to? Does it matter if the base is a letter, not a number? No, it doesn't. Right? We can still use a. We can still do a to the power of 5 times 3, which is just a to the power of 15. Let's try another one. Let's try c. I've got x to the power of 10 to the power of 4, which is the same as x to the power of 10 times 4, which is x to the power of 40. Okay, so pause the video, you have a go at the other ones. Alright, now let's work on question 5. This one is a little bit trickier because you have to think backwards. So the question is asking you, we're looking at question 5a, the question is asking you, what squared will give me 36a to the power of 4? Alright, so you need to think of something that goes inside a bracket. When you square it, you're going to end up with this 36 times a to the power of 4. So let's look at this 36 a to the power of 4. We can think of it separately. We can think of 36 first. What squared will give me 36? So what number can you multiply it by itself will give me 36? Right, let's think about 36 is just 6 squared, right? 6 times 6 is 36. So you can see the first bit is going to be 6 because 6 squared is going to give me 36. What about a to the power of 4? What squared is going to give me a to the power of 4? Have a think about it. Well, think about what rule have we been using. We've been using the third index law, or the multiplication rule. Right, so if you think about, what about a to the power of 2? A to the power of 2 squared is it going to give me a to the power of 4? Well, if I have a to the power of 2 and then I raise it to the power of 2, what do I do with the power? 2 times 2, which is 4. Which means a to the power of 2 squared is going to give me a to the power of 4. So the second part of what should be inside the bracket would be a to the power of 2. Let's check our answers. 6 squared. Let's check that. Let me just rub all that out. And we're going to check our answers. So let's check. If I've got 6a squared and then I square it, 6 squared is going to give me 6 squared. A squared is going to be a square, or a to the power of 2 times 2. 6 squared is just 36. A to the power of 2 times 2 is 4. So that equals, which means this is correct. Alright, let's look at, I'll do another one for you. Let's try B. Let's try B. Okay, I'm just going to use this space up the top. So what it's saying is, what should go inside the bracket for me to end up with 8 times t to the power of 9? So we can think of it separately. What to the power of 3 is going to give me 8, and what to the power of 3 is going to give me t to the power of 9. 8, what is 8? 8 is just 2 times 2 times 2, so it's the same as 2 to the power of 3, right? What to the power of 3, or what cubed, is going to give me t to the power of 9? What about t to the power of 3? Right? Because we know if you raise a power to a power, we're just going to multiply the powers together, right? 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. So t to the power of 3, then to the power of 3 is going to give me t to the power of 9. So what should be inside the bracket would be 2t cubed, right? And then raised to the power of 3 is going to give me t to the power of 8, t to the power of 9. Let's check our answers. Let's do a check. If I've got 2t cubed to the power of 3, what does that equal to? Well, that equals to the first bit raised to the power of 3, 2 to the power of 3, times t cubed times 3, right? Which is 2 to the power of 3 is 8, and t, 3 to the power of 3 times 3, which is just t to the power of 9, which means that's correct. Alright, so I'm going to give you some time to work on the rest. These are more challenging questions, so it might take you a bit longer to finish them. Alright, let's look at question 6. Simplify the following. I'm going to do 6a. 4 to the power of 2 to the power of a. What does that mean? Well, we're just using the third index law. 4, 2 times 8. Mathematicians are lazy. We don't want to write the multiply sign, so we can just write 4 to the power of 2a. Let's try C. 9 to the power of 4 to the power of m, which is just 9 to the power of 4 times m, or 9 4m. Let's do a harder one. I'm going to try I with you guys. So 4 to the power of 2t, and then to the power of 9m. What does that equal to? That equals to 4. You have to multiply the powers together, right? So 4 to the power of 2t times 9m. What does that whole chunk mean? Well, that means 4 to the power of 2 times t times 9 times m. Right? What can I multiply this 2 with? I can multiply it with the 9. 2 times 9 is 18. And then I have t and m, so I can just group them together. So t and m. So your answer would be 4 to the power of 18 tm. Alright? You have a go at the other ones. Alright, so let's take out your second worksheet for today's lesson. This is about the fourth index law, which is just, if you raise whatever to the power of 0, you're going to end up with 1. This is a very easy rule to remember. So let's work on question 1a, 43 to the power of 0. As I said, whatever is raised to the power of 0, you're going to end up with 1. Let's try C. X to the power of 0 times y to the power of 0. So what would x to the power of 0 become? 1. What would y to the power of 0 become? 1. So your answer is just 1. What about E? If I have x, y bracket to the power of 0, so what does that mean? That means x to the power of 0 times y to the power of 0. That's just 1 times 1, so you're going to end up with 1. But this time, let's look at F. If I got 9 and then y to the power of 0, does that whole thing equal to 1? Have a think about it. Does it equal to 1? No, it doesn't. Why not? Let's have a look. 9 is just 9, right? Y to the power of 0 becomes 1. So the answer will be 9 times 1, which is 9, right? Remember, 9y to the power of 0 is not the same as bracket 9y to the power of 0. Okay? If you have a bracket there, that means everything inside the bracket is raised to the power of 0. But in this case, it's just y is raised to the power of 0. And then you multiply that by 9. So they are not equal. So in F, the answer is 9. Let's look at G. Let's see if you can figure out this one. Do you think the answer... You have a go. Pause the video. Alright, let's have a look. So x times y to the power of 0. Does it mean x, y both raised to the power of 0? No. It's only y. It's only the y being raised to the power of 0. The x is by itself. So it's x times y raised to the power of 0, which is 1. Which means your answer is x. Okay, if we look at K, what will your answer be? Well, this one is much easier because everything inside the bracket is raised to the power of 0. So your answer should be 1. Question 2 is asking you to use your calculator to verify the following. So what it's saying is, type all that stuff into your calculator and make sure you get your answers. So you're going to use your calculator, type 9, and then you're going to press the XY button, and then 0, and you press equal or EXE, and then you're going to check if your answer equals to 1. Alright? So have a go. This is a calculator exercise. I want to look at E. Let's look at E. Negative bracket 6 to the power of 0. Why does that equal to negative 1? I want you to have a think about E. I'm going to work on the top. I'm just going to rub out the stuff from before. Negative 6. But negative bracket 6 to the power of 0. What does that equal to? What does that mean? The bracket applies to only the 6, not the negative sign. Okay? So the negative sign stays there. 6 to the power of 0 is 1. So your answer would be negative 1. But if the negative sign is inside the bracket, what do you think the answer would be? The answer would be 1, not negative 1. Because if the negative sign is inside the bracket, we're talking about this whole thing being raised to the power of 0. Alright, so you're going to end up with 1. I'm going to let you do the rest. Alright, so let's look at question 3. I will work on 3a. And let's work on 3a. 5 times 2y to the power of 0. What does that equal to? Well, 5, you're not doing much with the 5. So 5 stays the same. Times 2y to the power of 0. That means 2 times y to the power of 0. Remember we were saying, if we don't write anything in the middle, that's an implied multiplication sign. Alright, so let's see what we can do. 5 times 2 is just 10. y to the power of 0 is 1, which means your answer is 10. 10 times 1 is 10. Let's try B. 8a0 and then squared. So what does that mean? 8a to the power of 0 squared. Let's look at what does that mean? That means 8 times a to the power of 0 squared, right? So 8 stays the same. What does a to the power of 0 equal to? That equals to 1. So 8 times 1 is just 8, but we still have to raise it to the power of 2. So 8 squared is just 8 times 8, so your answer is 64. Okay? Alright, so I will do another one. Let's work on, maybe we can work on F. Negative 15 to the power of 0, and then you add 3. Negative 15, the whole thing is raised to the power of 0, so which means we are going to end up with 1. And what's 1 plus 3 is 4, so your answer would be 4. Let's look at G. AB to the power of 0 and then times 7. You can see the bracket, which means I don't really care what's inside the bracket, because if I have whatever's inside the bracket and then I raise it to the power of 0, I'm going to end up with 1, which means this whole chunk is going to become 1 times 7, which means my answer would be 7. Alright, I think I've done enough for you. You should be able to do more. Let's look at question 4. Let's look at 4a. 4a is quite slightly tricky, but if you are careful, you wouldn't mess it up. I've got 5x to the power of 0 plus bracket 5x to the power of 0. Let's look at the two terms. Does the first term equal to the second term? Alright, so my question is, does this equal to this guy? Yes or no? No, they're not, they don't equal. Those brackets make all the difference. Because this bit, 5x to the power of 0 is the same as 5 times x to the power of 0. Right? But the second bit, this guy, means everything inside raised to the power of 0. Okay? So that is the same, 5x to the power of 0. So they are not equal. Because if we go to the next step, 5 will stay the same, times this x to the power of 0 becomes 1. Then you add that with bracket 5x to the power of 0, which means it becomes 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1, your answer will be 6. So your answer is 6, not 2. Because if you just look at it, you might think, oh yeah, that might become 1, that might become 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, but it's not correct. Only the second term will become 1. The first term is 5 times 1. Right? Because only x to the power of 0 becomes 1, but the 5 is still there. Okay, so I'm going to do last one with you. Let's try C. 6t to the power of 0 divided by 6t0 to the power of 0. What would the top become? The top would become, you can see the bracket applies to the whole thing, which means the whole top becomes 1. Bottom is 6 times t to the power of 0, so it's 6 times 1, which is 1 over 6. Okay? You should be able to have a go at the rest. Alright, let's look at question 5. I will do 5a with you. 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 0. Which rule would we use? We use the multiplication rule, right? Same base, If we multiply them together, we're going to add the power, so it will become 3. 2 to the power of 3 plus 0, which means 2 to the power of 3. Let's look at, or you can use the raised to the power of 0 rule, because 2 to the power of 3 times 2 to the power of 0 is just 1, which means you're going to end up with 2 to the power of 3. Okay? So 5a is super easy. Let's try k. Let's see what k would become. Okay, I'm just going to rub this stuff out so I have a bit more space. So let's look at k. I've got 7 to the power of 2 times 7 to the power of 0 times 7 to the power of 8. What you can do is, remember, we can use the multiplication with 7. I don't care how many terms are there. If I multiply them together and they all have the same base, I just add the power. So this will be 2 plus 0 plus 8, which is the same as 7 to the power of 10. Okay? Let's look at L. L would be interesting. I've got negative 3 to the power of 0 times negative 3 to the power of 0 times negative 3 to the power of 0. What would that become? Let's have a look. This first bit is going to become 1, right? The whole thing inside the bracket raised to the power of 0, 1. Times, now I have the negative sign here. Remember, it's only the 3 being raised to the power of 0, not the negative sign. The negative sign stays. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. So you can see this guy actually becomes negative 1. Whereas the first guy becomes 1. The third guy, again, the negative sign stays. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. Which means it's 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1. We have two negatives becomes a positive. The answer is positive 1 or 1. Okay, so your answer is actually just 1. You can do the rest. Alright. These guys, they look a bit scarier, but are they really that bad? Let's get into it. Let's try 6b. You should be able to do 6a. I've got 9 to the power of a square. 9 times a square times b to the power of 0 divided by 3. A to the power of 0 and b. Let's have a look. Remember, what does that line in between mean? That's just a divide sign. Right? If we're dividing, we would be using the second index law. Right? We can minus the power. So, the numbers would be easy. 9 divided by 3 is just 3. Let's look at the a's. If I have a to the power of 2 divided by a to the power of 0, what does that equal to? It would be the power from the top, take away the power from the bottom. So it will be 3 to the power of 3 times a to the power of 2, take 0, right? Then what about b? B would be 0, take away, what would it take away? What does b by itself mean? B by itself is just the same as b to the power of 1. So it would be b 0 take away 1. So your answer is going to become 3 a to the power of 2 b to the power of negative 1. Okay, so your answer will be 3 a square b negative 1. Let's try c. Okay, c looks a bit yucky. 5x to the power of 2 and then cube times xy over 25x to the power of 7. Alright, so let's sort out what's on the top first. I've got this stuff and then raised to the power of 3. What would you do? Well, it will be everything inside raised to the power of 3, right? So it will be 5 raised to the power of 3 and then x 2 raised to the power of 3, which will just be x to the power of 2 times 3. Then I multiply that with x and y. X and y. The bottom will stay the same. Okay, let's see what would that become. 5 to the power of 3 is just 5 to the power of 3. X 2 times 3 is x to the power of 6. Then I multiply by another x. Right, so let's have a look at this bit. What would that become? Well, that's x to the power of 6 times x, right? Times x is just x to the power of 1, which means I can just add the power of 6 plus 1, which is x to the power of 7. So x to the power of 7. Y stays by itself over 25x to the power of 7. I want to simplify the 5 as well. 25 is just 5 to the power of 2, right? X to the power of 7 is that by itself. Okay, so now we can simplify. Now we can use the second index laws to divide. 5 to the power of 3 divided by 5 to the power of 2. So it's just 5 divided 3 to the power of 3, take 2. Times x to the power of 7, take away 7. Times y. Okay, so 5 to the power of 3, take 2 is 5 to the power of 1, which is just 5. X to the power of 0, which is just 1. Y is just y, so the answer is 5y. So all that stuff can just be simplified to 5y. That and that are exactly the same. Okay, so it looks really scary from the beginning, but once you start breaking it down, it's really not that bad. We are using the same rules over and over again. Have a go at the other ones. Check with your teachers and see if you can get them right. I might do one more hard one with you. Let's try, maybe we can try I. Okay, 4p to the power of 3 squared times 2pq divided by 32p to the power of 7. Okay. Alright, so let's sort out what's on the top first. You can get rid of the bracket by raising everything inside a bracket to the power of 2. So it becomes 4 to the power of 2, p to the power of 3 times 2. Then you multiply by 2, p and q. The bottom is 32, p to the power of 7. Okay, so let's have a look. I want to group the numbers together, 4 and the 2. 4 to the power of 2, but if you think about 4, what exactly is 2? What exactly is 4? 4 is just 2 squared, right? 2 times 2 is 4. So you can also write that as 2 to the power of 2. That's just 4 to the power of 2, right? P, 3 times 2 is 6. Then you multiply that by 2, PQ over 32. I want to simplify these numbers. 32, if you are good with your numbers, 32 is just 2 to the power of 5, right? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 32. So 32, you can write it as 2 to the power of 5. And then we have p to the power of 7. So now I'm going to expand the brackets, right? 2 to the power of 2 is just 2. To the power of 2 times 2, which is just 4. Okay, and then I have p6 times another 2, and then p and q over 2 to the power of 5, p to the power of 7. Alright, now let's group the stuff together. 2 to the power of 4, you can multiply by another 2. 2 is just 2 to the power of 1, which means the top will become 2 to the power of 4 plus 1. P to the power of 6, I can group that with p, which is just p to the power of 1, which is p to the power of 6 plus 1. Then I have the q. Bottom is 2 to the power of 5, p to the power of 7. So the top becomes 2 to the power of 5, p to the power of 7, and q over 2 to the power of 5, p to the power of 7. Alright, so now see if we can cancel things out a little bit more. So I'm running out of space, so I'm just going to finish it here. Alright, so let's group the like terms together. 2 to the power of 5 If I'm dividing it by 2 to the power 5, it's just you minus the power, right? Same as the p, 7 take 7, and then you multiply by the q, which becomes 2 to the power 5 take 5 is 2 to the power of 0, which is just 1. Same as for the p, 7 take 7, it becomes 0. P to the power of 0 is 1, which means my answer is just q. Alright, so after all that work, you can see all that stuff can be simplified to a simple q. Okay, week 2, lesson 2. Let's go through some questions together. Okay. You're going to have a mix of different rules. You should be able to be familiar with all the rules by now. We're going to try 1b. N to the power of 2 times n to the power of 5. Which rule will we use? We're going to use the first one. Same base. You multiply them together. You just add the powers. So it will become n to the power of 2 plus 5, which is n to the power of 7. Let's do I. 6m times 3m to the power of 2. What would that become? Well, I would times the numbers together, right? So 6 times 3 will give me 18. Then m, add the powers together. This m is just m to the power of 1. So it will be 1 plus 2 equals to 16m to the power of 3. A lot of students will make the mistake and think, oh yeah, if you don't write m to the power of 1, you would forget about that 1 there. You just think it's 0, but it's not. M to the power of 1 is m. Okay, so you have to assume that 1 is there. That 1 is actually there. We just don't need to write it. But when we are doing calculations, we need to realize that 1 actually exists. You have a go at the other ones. Question 2. We're going to use the division rule. Okay. Same base. If you divide them, you minus the power. Minus the bottom one from the top one. Let's try C. A to the power of 7 divided by a to the power of 5. Very simple. It's just a to the power of 7 take 5, which is a to the power of 2. Let's try E. I've got 16n to the power of 7 divided by 8n to the power of 4. 16, you can divide the numbers. 16 divided by 8 is just 2. N to the power of 7 is 7 take 4, which means your answer would be 2. N to the power of 7 take 4, which is just 3. So your answer is 2 n to the power of 3. What about I? I'm going to do the hardest one for you. If I have a to the power of 7, b to the power of 6, divided by a to the power of 4, b to the power of 3. What do? Well, what you're going to do is you group the like terms together. Alright? So you group the a's together, you group the b's together. So I'm going to be dividing a to the power of 7 by a to the power of 4, which is just a to the power of 7 take 4. And you do the same with the b, 6 take 3, which means you'll end up with a, 7 take 4 is 3, and b, 6 take 3 is 3. So your answer will be a to the power of 3, b to the power of 3. The only way you can be good at this is by practicing. Make sure you practice. If you're not familiar with it, do more. Ask the questions ask the teachers to give you more questions to do. You can only be good at it by practicing. Alright, so let's look at question 3. That's the power of the power rule. You multiply the powers together. For example, if we look at C, x to the power of 3 and then raised to the power of 2, it's just x to the power of 3 times 2, which is x to the power of 6. Okay, so what about if we look at E? A to the power of 3 square, and then I multiply a to the power of 4. What would that become? Now let's sort the first bit out first. A to the power of 3 to the power of 2 is the same as a to the power of 3 times 2. Then I need to multiply that by a to the power of 4. A to the power of 3 times 2 is 6 times a to the power of 4. Here, some students will get confused. Sometimes they might multiply 6 by 4 and end up with 8 to the power of 24. That's not correct. Because if we are multiplying these two terms together, we are just adding the powers. First index law. 6 plus 4 equals to 8 to the power of 10. So your answer would be 8 to the power of 10. I'm going to do, I think F is quite challenging, so let's try F. Y to the power of 7 squared divided by y to the power of 6. Y to the power of 7 squared is going to give me y to the power of 7 times 2. Bottom stays the same. Y to the power of 7 times 2 is the same as y to the power of 14 divided by y to the power of 6. And we're dividing numbers with the same base. We can just minus the powers. So y 14 takes 6, which means I will end up with y to the power of 8. You can have a go at the other ones. I think you guys should be able to do question 4, but I might just try D with you guys. Okay, so let's look at 4D. 5m to the power of 0 times 8m bracket to the power of 0. What would the first term become? That's the same as 5 times m to the power of 0, which is 1. Then you multiply this. What would this guy become? We talk about the entirety, the entire 8m, the whole thing raised to the power of 0, which means this whole thing is going to become 1. So your answer is going to become 5. Alright, so the trick of this question is don't get confused. The brackets make things confusing, but if you can sort it out, it's very easy. So 5m to the power of 0 is not the same as bracket 5m to the power of 0, because 5m to the power of 0 is the same as 5 times m to the power of 0, which means 5 times 1, which is just 5. But this guy, it means everything raised to the power of 0, which means the whole thing becomes 1. 5 is not equal to 1. So make sure you don't make that mistake. Try the other ones yourself. Alright, let's try, we might do 5f together. If we can do the hard ones, you should be able to do the easier ones. So let's try 5f. 7a to the power of 2 times b divided by 4a to the power of 2 times b. Alright. So what would you do? 7 divided by 4 is just 7 over 4. A to the power of 2 divided by a to the power of 2 is the same as a to the power of 2. Take 2, right? Same as b divided by b is b to the power of 1. Take 1, which means I'm going to end up with 7 over 4. A to the power of 2 take 2 is 0, which means a to the power of 0 is 1. B to the power of 1 take 1 is b to the power of 0, which is also 1. So times 1, which means my answer is 7 over 4. Alright. Another easier way to look at it as, or if you can see 7 over 4, the whole thing, a to the power of 2b, a to the power of 2b, if they are the same, you can just cancel them out. Because a to the power of 2 divided by a to the power of 2 is just 1. Because whatever divided by whatever is going to end up with 1. 1,000 divided by 1,000 is 1. A billion divided by a billion is just 1. So a to the power of 2 divided by a to the power of 2 is just 1. Same as b divided by b is just 1. So your answer is actually just 7 over 4. So if you can see this, you don't even need to use any index law. You can just, oh yeah, I know, a squared divided by a squared, that's going to be 1. B divided by b, that's going to be 1. Maybe I'll try E with you as well. 27 x cubed divided by 9x. What would you do here? 27, we can divide the numbers, right? 27 divided by 9 is just 3. X cubed divided by x is the same as x. 3 take 1, right? X is just x to the power of 1, which means your answer would be 3x to the power of 2. Okay, you can have a go at the other ones. They should be easier. Alright, so now let's do, maybe we will do h together. So I've got 24 x to the power of 3, y to the power of 6 divided by 12 x squared y 4, y to the power of 4. Why do I always use the line to represent this division sign, you might ask? That's because it makes things much clearer. Because what this question is saying is this whole chunk divided by this whole chunk. So it makes, for me, it's easier for me if I write it out like this, so then I can see, yeah, actually, is this guy divided by this guy can be divided by this guy can be divided by that guy. Okay? It just makes things easier to see, but you don't have to if this way doesn't work for you. So let's divide 24. What can I divide 24 with? I can divide 24 by 12, which means I will end up with 2. X cubed divided by x squared is x cubed divided by x squared. So it will be 3 take 2 as the power. Then I've got y to the power of 6 take 4, which means I'm going to end up with 2. X 3 take 2 is just x to the power of 1. I don't really need to write it because x to the power of 1 is just x. Y 6 take 4 is y squared. So your answer will be 2x y squared. Okay, I think we have tried the other ones as well from previous examples, so you should be able to do everything here. Again, the moral of the story is practice, practice, practice. It might look scary for now, but if you've done 10 questions, 20 questions, 100 questions, everything will become so easy. Okay? Please work hard. It will make your lives much easier. Okay? Take care and have fun.